Welcome to On the Ballot with Ballotpedia, where we take a closer look at the week's top political stories. Ballotpedia connects people to politics by providing neutral, nonpartisan, and reliable information on our government, how it works, and where it's headed. We're here to give you the facts so you can form your own opinion. I'm Victoria Rose, and thanks for being with us. Today, staff writer Mish Tail joins us to break down some of the biggest stories we're following at the moment. Mish, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Victoria.
How have things been? It's been a while since you've been on.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Well, the Super Bowl is this weekend, so I'm excited about that. Shout out to Rihanna.
That's what you're tuning in for, not the football.
Absolutely.
Well, so am I. Who do you have winning?
The Eagles.
I'll say the Chiefs, so we keep this, neutral. We're giving the best of both sides. Today, we are going to do a roundup of a bunch of storylines we're following. So let's just jump into it. We're recording this episode on Wednesday, February 8th. And although votes are still being tallied for the outcomes of the special elections for the Pennsylvania State House, they're starting to become clear. Where did the races stand to fill the vacant seats in districts 32, 34, and 35?
Well, we should note that according to CNalysis, all three vacant districts voted for President Joe Biden by margins of more than 15 percentage points in 2020, which means these special elections were favoring the Democrats. And maybe, unsurprisingly, the Democrats captured all three of the vacant seats up for grabs. In District 32, incumbent Anthony DeLuca died on October 9th, 2022, but he remained on the ballot and was reelected, which created the vacant seat. Democrat Joe McAndrew defeated Clee Walker with 75% of the vote there. In District 34, incumbent Summer Lee won re-election, but also won elections to represent Pennsylvania's 12th congressional district. Democrat Abigail Salisbury defeated Robert Pagane with nearly 88% of the vote to capture that open seat. And in District 35, incumbent Austin Davis, Democrat, won re-election, but also won election as Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania. Matthew Gurgley, another Democrat, will replace Davis in District 35 after defeating Republican Don Nevels with 89% of the vote.
Got it. So these races played out as we might have expected them to. And just a quick note for our listeners, heading into the election, control of the state house was split between the two parties. So the partisan divide was 99 Democrats to 101 Republicans with the three vacancies. So the new split is 102 Democrats to 101 Republicans. This is the first time Democrats have won the state house in Pennsylvania in 12 years. There are two more elections we're watching that are coming up in the next few weeks. What's the story in Wisconsin, where there's an open seat on the state's Supreme Court?
Justice Patience Roggensack's term will expire on July 31st of this year, and he isn't running for re-election. This month's primary will decide the top two candidates to fill the vacancy, who will then face off in the general election scheduled for April 4th. Wisconsin Supreme Court elections are officially nonpartisan, but the court is considered to have a 4-3 conservative majority, with Roggensack, a member of the court's conservative majority, retiring. This election will determine the ideological control of the court. 4 candidates are running in the nonpartisan primary for the open seat: Jennifer Dorow, Daniel Kelly, Everett Mitchell, and Janet Protashevitz. According to the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, Mitchell and Protashevitz are running as liberal candidates. Kelly and Dorow are running as conservative candidates. At this point, it doesn't seem super clear who the frontrunner might be. Wisconsin is one of the states with a divided government, meaning neither party holds a trifecta. The governor is Democrat Tony Evers, while the Republican Party controls both chambers of the state legislature.
So big implications for the ideological balance of Wisconsin's court. We'll be looking forward to finding out who those top two vote getters are going to be. The other election that's top of mind is the Chicago mayoral race on February 28th. And there are 9 candidates on the ballot, so voters will have plenty of options at the polls. Could you give our listeners a little preview?
Incumbent Lori Lightfoot, Jesus Garcia, Brandon Johnson, and Paul Vallis have performed the best in polling and received the most media attention. The other candidates are Cambion Buckner, Jamal Green, Sophia King, Roderick Sawyer, and Willie Wilson. Lightfoot was first elected mayor in 2019. Lightfoot won 17.5% of the vote back then in a 14-candidate field in the general election. In the April 2nd runoff, she defeated Tony Preckwinkle 74% to 26%. Among the candidates, there are 8 affiliated with the Democratic Party and 1 independent. The last Republican mayor of Chicago, William Thompson, left office in 1931. The candidates considered to be Lightfoot's biggest challengers, Garcia, Johnson, and Vallis, all have roots in the Democratic Party. Garcia is a Democratic member of the U.S. House representing Illinois' 4th Congressional District. Johnson was elected to the Cook County Board of Commissioners as a Democrat in 2018, and Vallis was the 2014 Democratic nominee for lieutenant governor. He has worked as Chief Administrative Officer at Chicago State University and was the CEO of Chicago Public Schools.
We're going to have a special episode in a month or so unpacking the results of this election, which may end up in a runoff like the last election. So it should be really interesting to see how this plays out. Can you bring me up to speed on where things stand with Article 3 judicial vacancies? How many are there at the moment?
As of this week, there are 88 Article 3 vacancies in the federal judiciary of 870 total Article 3 judgeships. Just a quick reminder for our listeners, Article 3 judges are the justices of the Supreme Court, judges of the Circuit Court of Appeals, judges of the district courts, and judges of the Court of International Trade.
And just for some added context to that, there are 5 key steps in the vacancy process: a presidential nomination, a U.S. Senate committee hearing, a vote by a U.S. Senate committee to report the nominee to the full Senate, a confirmation vote by the U.S. Senate, and then finally a confirmed nominee takes their judicial oath and receives their judicial commission. So where do the nominees to fill some of these vacancies currently stand?
There are 36 nominees currently somewhere in that process. 7 are awaiting a hearing in the Senate Judiciary Committee. 4 are awaiting a committee vote in the Senate Judiciary Committee, and 25 are awaiting a confirmation vote in the full U.S. Senate.
Got it. So a big chunk of those nominees are in the final stages of the vacancy process. The last thing on our agenda today is a quick snapshot of the cases coming before the Supreme Court this month. The court's February sitting will see 7 cases argued, all of which come near the end of the month, Mish. So we'll have to have you back to unpack how they went. But which of these cases will you be most closely watching?
Well, both Gonzalez versus Google on the 21st and Twitter versus Tamneh on the 22nd concern the liability of internet platforms for other publishers' content. Google's case directly concerns Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which protects platforms like Google from having liability for materials published by others on their sites. The case stems from the 2015 murder of U.S. citizen Nohemi Gonzalez while abroad in Paris by the Islamic State. The family alleges that videos on YouTube's platform, which is owned by Google, aided the Islamic State's recruitment efforts and specifically recommended the videos to Gonzalez through its user targeting algorithms. Twitter's case concerns Section 230 as well, but it also addresses liability under Section 233 of the Anti-Terrorism Act. The plaintiffs in this case are relatives of Narwas Al-Asif, a Jordanian citizen who was killed in another Islamic State attack, a 2017 nightclub shooting in Turkey that claimed the lives of 39 people. The plaintiffs alleged that the internet platform aided and abetted the Islamic State's growth, as the group used the platform for recruitment, propaganda, and to terrorize civilians. The other case that's got my attention is Biden versus Nebraska on the 28th, which is a challenge to Biden's student loan debt relief program. As we likely remember from this past summer, Biden announced a massive student loan debt relief program that would cancel a maximum of $20,000 in federal student loans for qualifying borrowers. It has been among his most polarizing policy proposals thus far. The plan was met with immediate challenges, and Nebraska and 6 other states challenged the program in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Missouri. In the Supreme Court case, the states will argue that the program exceeded the Secretary of Education's authority and was arbitrary and capricious. Biden versus Nebraska is also related to another Supreme Court case, Department of Education versus Brown. The case concerned 2 student loan borrowers, Myra Brown and Alexander Taylor, who alleged that they were improperly denied the opportunity to comment on the student loan plan, and that if the Biden administration had properly given them the opportunity, they would have recommended broader eligibility criteria for the plan. Brown was ineligible under the program, and Taylor was eligible for $10,000 in relief.
So there are some pretty consequential cases coming in front of the court these next few weeks. Like I mentioned, Mij, we're going to have you back when the dust settles. As always, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and I hope you enjoy that Rihanna concert on Sunday.
Oh, I will. And if you're listening, Rihanna, we're still waiting on the album. Thanks for having me, Victoria.
Breaking news. Politics is back with more footnote facts. Who could have seen that coming? There's an old saying that all politics is local. Well, the trivia today certainly is. We're talking about 2023 local elections in the 100 largest cities by population, which Victoria and my fellow Floridian Mij just touched on with Mayor Lori Lightfoot of Chicago. But first, your trivia question. Of the 100 most populous cities, which is the smallest that is having a mayoral election? No cheating, I'll know if you looked up the answer. Now, a large number of cities across the country have their elections in odd-numbered years, so this isn't an uncommon occurrence for local elections. But we're focusing on the 100 most populated cities, though, because we don't have full data on how many localities are holding 2023 elections. 41 of those cities across 19 states are having municipal elections in 2023. And according to 2020 population counts, these cities alone have elections that affect over 28.7 million people. And then for even more unusual election timing, 37 of those cities are having at least one office's general election held in the spring. But obviously, what those offices are varies from state to state, from the most well-known like mayor to the most obscure like the Greater Boise Auditorium District Board of Directors. The office most commonly seen in elections this year will be City Council, including a handful of special elections for it. In fact, Los Angeles only makes the list of 2023 elections because City Council District 6 is up for a special election following the resignation of Nuri Martinez. Los Angeles used to have regularly scheduled municipal elections in odd-numbered years, but in recent years became part of the trend of moving those to even-numbered years. Regardless, 36 of the 41 most populous cities having city elections includes elections for City Council, Virginia Beach and Chesapeake in Virginia, the latter of which I have a soft spot for because of extended family, are two of the 5 that don't have city council elections, but they have elections for soil and water conservation districts. Then Cleveland has several judgeships and a court clerk, Chula Vista has a special election for city attorney, and Baton Rouge has a special election for district court judge. Though, of course, the main event in local elections is for mayor, but only 24 of those top 100 cities are having mayoral elections in 2023. Technically, a bunch of these are nominally nonpartisan, but even though they don't officially run with a party, we can safely say that mayors and candidates are in one party or another because of past comments, recent political experience, what media outlets report, or maybe something else that clues us in. So with that in mind, 15 of those 24 mayoral seats are currently held by Democrats, 6 of them by Republicans, and 3 of them by independents or an unknown affiliation. As of February 6th, we know that the 5 Democratic mayors in Chicago, Columbus, Ohio, Kansas City, Missouri, Tampa, Florida, and Madison, Wisconsin are running for re-election. We are not yet sure if any Republican mayors are running for re-election. More filing deadlines are coming up on February 17th, though, so we'll have a better picture of who all is running and who is not. Some incumbents are term limited, though, such as Republican Lenny Curry of Jacksonville, Florida. Now, back to the trivia question. Of the 100 most populous cities, which is the smallest that is having a mayoral election in 2023? And that would be Spokane, Washington, ranking number 96 of 100 in population based on 2020 counts. The mayor's office there is currently occupied by Nadine Woodward. Maybe one day I can be elected mayor of, well, actually I live in an unincorporated community, so there are no city offices here. I'll just go create a micronation or something to make myself seem important. That always sounded fun. They even have a convention for it. Until next time, folks. More trivia for you then. Back to you, Victoria.
Thanks, Paul. A quick request for our listeners, please check out the link in our show notes to fill out our 2023 survey, which helps us get a better understanding of what you're looking for from us here at Ballotpedia. We really appreciate it. And that's all for this week's episode of On the Ballot. Thanks again to Mij for coming on the show today. Make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, if you have any questions, comments, or love for Ballotpedia, feel free to send it to us at ontheballot@ballotpedia.org or on Twitter @Ballotpedia. I'm Victoria Rose, and thanks for listening.